Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. Week 3 of the 25-26 NBA season is in the books and things are just starting to become a little interesting across both conferences. We've seen some teams that continue to bottom out. We've seen a couple of other teams really start to show their true colours, and a little bit of a wobble here and there from teams we kind of expected that from. The Eastern Conference has seen a new leader rise. Meanwhile, the West is seeing some pretty consistent names and numbers posted across the board. Will there be any extra shocks? We'll just have to find out. Let's get into it. The review for week 3 of the 25-26 NBA season. We'll start with Atlanta, who finished the week 3-1, moving up to 6-5 overall, now 8th in the conference. Zachariah Ricochet, their best player through their 4 games, 16.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 1.5 steals, and 0.8 blocks on 0.8 turnovers. 43.6% from the field, 34.6% from deep, and 76.9% from the free throw line. Of course, the concern was going to be how this team gelled, specifically without Trae Young, and they haven't had too bad of a return when you consider the fact that it has just been a matter of whoever puts their hand up to score the ball is scoring the ball. Defensively, they're starting to click a little bit better. Had a really nice win over the Lakers, pretty much as a thrown together side, which is a really nice positive thing to see. But overall, Atlanta just starting to pick up a little bit, and I don't know whether the semi-finals are going to be their thing, but the playoffs are certainly going to be their thing. For Boston, they are now 5-6 overall, 2-1 on the week. They now sit 10th in the East. Jaylen Brown continuing to be the shining light in a very dim room there for the Celtics. In his 3 games played, 31.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 0.3 blocks on 3 turnovers. 52.1% from the field, 28.6% from deep, and 77.8% from the free throw line. Again, Boston just trying to find some momentum where they can. They were very much on the verge of breaking 500 this week, weren't able to do it. But if they can, and they're able to stay in touch just with some of the mixing and the matching going on with the East, there's no doubt that they'll be back in contention sooner rather than later. They are a really weirdly mixed match bunch, as I've mentioned. Not a lot of height, trying to find some defensive effort and really getting through their bench where they can. Simons is trying to step up as a 6-man, not necessarily in the starting role I thought he'd have, but it makes a lot of sense considering that Peyton Pritchard has been there and paid his dues. Over to Brooklyn, one of the worst teams in the league, one of the 3 worst teams in the league in fact. Got their first win of the year this week for a 1-2 record, but they are still 1-9 overall. 13th in the East. Michael Porter Jr., their best player on the week, 28.3 points, 6.7 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1 steal on 3.7 turnovers, 49.1% from the field, 43.3% from deep, and 81.8% from the free throw line. To be fair, if Michael Porter Jr. had been able to reach this level of consistent production under Nikola Jokic, he wouldn't be sitting in Brooklyn. I don't mean that from a point standpoint, more an efficiency standpoint and making the most of your opportunities. Of course, the big story being Cam Thomas out of this team for a few weeks. That certainly doesn't help the offensive side of the ball. We'll see if they can lift their profile a little bit defensively, but 1 win every 3 weeks. They are in for a very long season. Speaking of teams in for a long season, that would be the Charlotte Hornets. Without a win this week, now 3-7 overall. They're 12th in the East and starting to show their true colours. Con Knippel, the rookie, 3 games played and a reasonable week for Knippel. 23 points, 10 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. Shot 44% from the field, 34.5% from deep and 100% from the free throw line. Just need to put in some work. Ultimately, Charlotte, they've got a lot of high octane offense. They don't have much going for them defensively. And again, we're back to a case of who is going to step up and step out for this team. Knippel is the rookie, appears to be that guy, but I just wouldn't be wanting to back myself with him as the man. We'll see exactly how it continues to unfold, but again, a little bit of work to do on that front. Chicago Bulls next off the rank, and again a down week for the Bulls. A 1-3 record, moving to 6-4 overall, and a really hot start the first 2 weeks sees them back around 6th. We know they haven't been at 100%, but it does generally speak volumes of exactly where this team is sitting. And again, you're only as good as what you can put on the floor, and considering Kevin Huerter was their only real consistent player across the week, he gets the mention here. 4 games played, 15.8 points, 4 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1 steal and 1.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. Reasonable shooting splits for a guy who can essentially be classed as the 4th option on this team. 48% from the field, 37.5 from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. For Chicago, again, you've just got to get some injuries out of the system. You've got to get some consistent performances, and you've just got to try and stick it out, because yeah, their first couple of weeks were okay, but when you put together a performance like this, 5-1 to 6-4, you then start to really find yourself back down around that, hey, we're starting to look like a play-in team, not a playoff team. There are some players that do need to step up, but ultimately you're only as good as what you can put on the park. For a team that is putting some good stuff on the park, though, is the Cleveland Cavaliers. A 3-1 weekly record. They've boosted themselves up to 7-4 overall. They're now 4th in the conference. And a guy who's been one of the leading talking points in the Eastern Conference, Donovan Mitchell. Big week for him. 31.8 points, 7.5 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 1.8 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 1.8 turnovers. Shot 46.2% from the field, 36.7 from deep, and 95.8 from the free throw line. There are games where Mitchell is just putting them on their back. It's as simple as that. He's the one who takes the reins. He's the one that is just trying to get it done for them. Don't get me wrong, there's been some really good contributions on this team. Evan Mobley trying to step up. You're obviously getting Garland back to try and get him back to all-star level form. He's been crucial as well. But when you've got someone like Mitchell who's shooting the lights out from deep, who's making them from the free throw line and converting pretty well from the field, you're always going to be in with a chance. And ultimately, that's exactly what's gone on here for Cleveland. Still in the top 4, and I think we're going to see them climb a little bit higher. A team that has climbed really high, though, and a team that we didn't expect to climb really high, the Detroit Pistons. 4-0 on the week, undefeated, 9-2 overall on the season, 1st in the conference, 2nd in the league, and a big part of that, Cade Cunningham. 34.3 points, 5 rebounds, 10.5 assists, 2 steals, and 0.5 blocks on 3.5 turnovers in that 4-game stretch. A big game, particularly closing out Washington at home in overtime. 44.1% from the field, 26.7 from deep, and 88.6 from the free throw line. I know that the field goal percentage isn't great. In fact, he pretty much just set the record. In fact, I'm sure he set the record for the most missed shots in a game. Yet still shot 44.1% from the field. Cade should have been All-NBA first team last year, in my opinion. Wasn't there, and it purely came down to the fact that people didn't respect exactly what the Pistons had done. He made the 3rd team, finished 7th in MVP voting. I had him as high as 5th. This is a guy that can play. This Detroit team is starting to really settle. There's some nice positive things happening around the Pistons. Just a matter of whether they can be consistent and whether they're able to keep it up, because they're going to be a genuine threat a lot sooner than I thought they would be in the East. And that's a scary proposition for some teams. What is scary, though, is the Indiana Pacers, and that is not for a good reason. Didn't win a game this week, 0-3. They're now 1-9 overall, and they are 14th in the East. It's amazing what happens with injuries and, a couple of key pieces that just disappear off the team. Just unbelievable stuff. Jay Huff was their best player. Yes, the big, bald guy was their best player and most consistent player to have played in all 3 games this week. 10.7 points, 6.3 rebounds, an assist, and 3 blocks on 1 turnover. So I actually don't mind the contributions when you consider what role he should be playing on this team. 42.3% from the field, made 1/3 of his shots from deep, made 2/3 of his shots from the line. But ultimately, Indiana are already sitting here, and they've got 1 more week to go until they're out of playoff contention. That's the level of mediocrity that they're sitting at right now. They can't help it. That's injuries. That's how the game's played. But anytime you get 10 below 500 at any point in the season, it is pretty much done. We're already going to be ruling out at least 3 teams, maybe even 4 teams in the next 2 weeks of this season. Indiana, unfortunately, looks like they're going to be one, and I thought they were going to be a playoff team. And then we look at the fortunes of another team. A team that I thought was going to be a bottom 5 team, but with the way that the East is unfolding now, could very well be much more of a top contender, and that's the Miami Heat. They're now 7-4 overall, 3-1 on the week, and sit 3rd in the East of guys to have played 4 games. The most consistent and efficient player certainly was Andrew Wiggins. Hit the game-winning oop in their last game of the week. 20.5 points, 3.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.5 steals and 0.8 blocks on 1.3 turnovers, 55.4% from the field, 47.8% from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. I mean, we're talking about a guy here who has managed to bounce around 3 teams now, was rejected by a Warriors team that could probably use a bit of what he's bringing to the floor right now. There's another teammate here that I'm going to touch on in a second. But Wiggins, again, he's just been this plug-and-play guy. He was a guy that was, first, second option there in Minnesota, got an all-star break and a championship in Golden State. Now just continues to plug away. I mean, this is a guy that's a 10-year vet in the league right now, which is something crazy to think about, but he's been in the league 10 years. I remember when his high school mixtape was floating around on YouTube and everyone was losing their minds at what Andrew Wiggins was going to be able to do in the league. A guy that was also playing well for them is Norman Powell, and you would like to think, if you were a Clippers fan, that Norman Powell was suiting up for you. Unfortunately, it's not the case, and you could really use him right now. Over to Milwaukee, who went 2-2 on the week. They're now 7-4 overall in the conference, and they are 5th in the East. Giannis with another big week. 4 games played, 32.5 points, 9.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists. A quiet week by Giannis standards, particularly this season. 0.8 steals and 1.8 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. Efficiency from the field down from its traditional, over the last couple of years, 60+% to 56.2. Making a third of threes and 65.1 from the free throw line as expected. The Bucks just need another, shooter to get round them once more. And it's something that we've seen for most of the season there, where Giannis just continues to plug and play, get the job done, and have somehow some supporting cast around him. Ryan Rollins with a nice week last week, but they just haven't seen the same sort of support this week. We'll see exactly what they're going to be able to do, but I mean, with the way the East is unfolding, Milwaukee a really strong top 6 candidate there, and if they keep playing their cards right, potentially a top 4 candidate. So we'll see how things unfold. Speaking of unfolding, that's the New York Knicks. They're top 2 in the East. They'd like to be number 1, but they are top 2. They went undefeated on the week, only the 2 games, 6-3 now overall, 2nd in the conference, as I mentioned. And a shout out to a workhorse, a real New York guy. When you think of New York basketballers, you think of flash, but there's a lot of substance over style, there's a lot of grit, there's a lot of grind, there's a lot of hard work, and OG Anunoby symbolises that. 22 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists to go 1.5 steals and 0.5 blocks on a turnover. Elite shooting splits as well, 57.1 from the field, 63.6 from deep, and 83.3 from the free throw line. For the Knicks, it's not a bad little break. It's a really small week, but they now need to take advantage of it, because these are the weeks where you should be getting healthy, where you should be getting fit, where if you've got a weaker opponent, you're picking that particular game to play well in, or if you're a star, a particular game to get others involved, to try and generate the offense and really motivate the defense. But nice spy at New York. They've just stayed where they need to be. They're trying to get a little further up the ladder, but they are going to be, it's going to be really interesting, because the top of the East right now has started to get a little bit more exciting, with the prospect of exactly what someone like a Detroit could do. To Orlando, they are still working back towards 500, and I've got no doubt that they're going to get there. 2-2 on the week, 5-6 now overall for the year, and 11th in the conference. Paolo Banchero continues to be the leader there. 23.3 points, 8.8 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 0.8 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. 48.3 from the field, 20% from deep, and 80.0 from the free throw line. Orlando just have this thing where they were meant to take a step and they haven't. A lot of this, I think, still comes down to chemistry and exactly what you're going to get out of a Desmond Bain. But part of that is that you've had a couple of guys that were really crucial to the core of this team and the success of this team who have been moved on. Not necessarily passed over, but certainly have been moved on. And you've got to wonder sometimes what that does with the character and the psychology of a team. Because it's quite a bit to sacrifice a guy and just see him walk out the door. Yeah, you've got a proven commodity back, but they now have to earn that trust. And ironically, Desmond Bain hitting a really big game winner today to try and earn a bit more of that trust. Orlando, again, I think they'll be fine until I start seeing a genuine slip and real threat to be below 500. There's not going to be many negative words to be said about the Magic. There are some negatives though for the next team up, the Philadelphia 76ers. A red hot start. They were 5-1 in their opening couple of weeks, and after a tough run of opponents, a 1-3 record, now 6-4, and they have dropped all the way down to 7th. Of course, that wouldn't be possible without the assistance of some far poorer players than this guy. Tyrese Maxey continues to be their focal point. 32.5 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.3 steals and 1.3 blocks on 3.3 turnovers. 47.9 from the field, 40% from deep, 85.2 from the free throw line. Just continues to put numbers on the board, continues to drive production, continues to motivate his teammates to get the job done. It's now just a matter of what exactly is going to happen, because Embiid is healthier. I wouldn't say he's the healthiest he can be. He's fitter, but he's not the fittest he would be. But he's still productive. So where do you try and mix and match that particular player into this Philadelphia lineup? Particularly when you've got Maxey playing at an All-NBA level, when you've got VJ Edgecombe sitting there wanting to be Rookie of the Year, you then have to manage a former two-time scoring champion and MVP who's known to be injury-prone. I wonder whether this motivates Paul George a little bit further. We'll soon see about that. But right now for Philadelphia, they've just got to get back on the wins column. They've just got to try and balance it out with a couple of positive weeks and start to regroup from there. To Toronto, 2-1 weekly record, but that's bumped them to 5-5. So they're well and truly in that playing picture at 9th in the conference. Scotty Barnes just continuing to be impressive on both sides of the ball, really consistent on both sides of the ball, and a reason that many hoops heads will rate him highly. 18.3 points, 6 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 2.3 steals and 2 blocks on a turnover. Shot 45.7% from the field, 41.7 from deep, and 88.9 from the free throw line. There were questions as to who was going to break earliest in this in this Toronto team, and we've found it. We've developed really quickly that it is Brandon Ingram who has cracked it in this lineup. How they go to manage that now, I don't know. That leadership has to be on someone of Ingram's standings, and certainly someone of the persuasion like a Scotty Barnes. But it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to manage it, what they're going to get out of it. I don't know. RJ Barrett, Emmanuel quickly are fine. You've only got to see that Pirtle is fine with it, but it's a matter of now getting them back on pace, getting Ingram checked in and really showing exactly what this experiment is all about. Finally, we go to Washington, the worst team in the conference, the first team to 10 wins this year, so probably the worst team in the league, let alone the conference. 0-4 record. Alex Sarr, their best player, 20.8 points, 8.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, a steal and 3 blocks on 2.5 turnovers. 50.7 from the field, 29.4 from deep, and 66.7 from the stripe. I just think a little more aggression here from Alex Sarr will really help round his game. Offensively, he's still trying to produce. He's still trying to set screens and get involved. Defensively, box out, get a rebound, block shots. He does the bare minimum there. It's just a matter of exactly what's going to happen now with Washington. Because, Alex Sarr's looking really, really good, but you're going to need more than Alex Sarr to do it. Because while he's producing at this level, he isn't Victor Wembanyama, and that's something that he unfortunately can't work on. Over to the West, and we'll start with, the second worst team in the West, but certainly the lowest performing team in the West. That's the Dallas Mavericks. 1-3 weekly record, 3-8 overall now. 14th in the conference, and Cooper Flagg having his breakout week. as the star of this team. 17.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 2 steals and a block on 2.3 turnovers. 47.5 from the field, 73.3 from the stripe. Did shoot 18.8 from deep, but that's not really gonna cut it. They're very lucky to have got a win. Brandon Marshall was really big in that performance. It's just a matter now of exactly what Dallas trying to do. Are they going to wait for Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving? Are they going to look to make another trade piece, or are they looking to bottom out and again get another draft pick? I don't really know. The talk is that Nico Harrison's going to get fired. It's amazing that a move like trading Luka Doncic hasn't actually done that, but nonetheless, here we are. A team that's on the other side of that, though, was projected to be, top 2, top 3 team in the West, and they're still doing it. The Denver Nuggets, undefeated on the week, 3-0 weekly record, 7-2 overall to be third in the West. Jokic, in their 3 games, just loading up a triple-double, 30.3 points, 12.7 rebounds, 13 assists. 1.3 steals, 0.3 blocks on 4 turnovers, shooting a ridiculous 72.3% from the field, 55.6 from deep, and 90% from the free throw line. The only qualm right now with Denver is that their guys that they've recruited, particularly someone like Cam Johnson, just aren't performing where they need to be. Now, does it help that a Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon have come out and been consistent in their performance like they would be in the playoffs or with an all-star nod? Of course, you'd be stupid not to suggest that, but when you recruit someone who starts shooting 7-8 points a game and isn't shooting the ball really well, I know that they had more of a starring role last year, but they have been a bench player before. They have seen success as a bench player. Don't tell me they can't do it. We know they can do it. They just simply choose not to. The Golden State Warriors, they are starting to show their age a little bit, even though we are only 3 weeks into the season. Started hot, but the icy hot is exactly what they need now. A 2-2 weekly record, 6-5 overall to be 7th in the conference. Moses Moody, their best player through those 4 games. 16.8 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.3 blocks on, you guessed it, 1.3 turnovers. 45.7% from the field, 41.2 from deep, and 84.6 from the free throw line. So he is a deadly shooter, Moses Moody. But you do just have to think that age is going to be the only major concern for this team. They've had some really good looks. They've had some really good moments where they've really started to fire up. But they've also had some real questionable moments. I think you'd call them senior moments, perhaps. I don't know exactly how to put it. You can't rule Golden State out if they're within a playoff contention and they're really trying to find some seeding, but they're in the very upper echelon of the play-in tournament by comparison now. I don't know whether they keep that up. I don't know whether they maintain that position, whether they outgrow it, whatever's going to happen. But they can't afford to have anyone older on their team. They need to go younger if they're going to try and make something out of it. I don't see it happening this year, but if they're going to capitalise on this window of opportunity, then they just probably need to be a little bit more youthful. Over to Houston, a team that's now starting to finally pick up. 6-3 overall record, 2-1 weekly record, 5th in the conference, and this man, Alperen Sengun, continues to take that step. As I said, I thought he was All-NBA last year. I think he's a chance to make it this year if he keeps this up. 22.7 points, 12 rebounds, 7.3 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 4.7 turnovers. 51% from the field, 22.3% from deep, and 77.8 from the free throw line. The key thing here right now is that Thompson is the one that generates the offense. You then see the results come out of a Sengun or out of a Kevin Durant. I don't know exactly what sort of dynamic it's going to be moving forward. It's good that you've got clearly 2 guys willing to stand up and do the alpha, but at one point Batman has to have a Robin. Is Kevin Durant going to turn up with all of his resume and be a Robin? Is Sengun going to swallow his pride and have to be that? Are we looking at Thompson to potentially do that? I don't quite know, but it is an intriguing prospect, particularly with the way that Houston are playing. I would not want to be running into the Rockets right now. But there is a team I would like to be running into, and that is the Los Angeles Clippers. Kawhi Leonard, bitten by the injury bug, hasn't been playing. Not that it matters because they've been totally defeated. 0-4 on the week, 3-7 overall. They now move to 13th in the conference. Then there's one of the more competent centres from last season still floating around, Ivica Zubac. 16 points, 11.3 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1 steal and 0.5 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. Shot 61.4 from the field and 62.5 from the free throw line. They're old, they're injured, they're not recovering, they're not getting up and down the floor. This was the fear that a lot of people had with this Clippers team. It was a matter of whether it was going to come to fruition, and it's definitely come to fruition. It's as simple as that. Some brain fades to end the week going up against Atlanta. That was a game that they definitely should have won. It certainly could have had in the bag, or certainly could have forced overtime on. Didn't do any of that. Began to panic twice within 30 seconds and cost themselves the game ultimately. But maybe that's just a sign of exactly where the Clippers are sitting right now. I don't really know. 13th isn't where they want to be. A defeated week isn't where they wanted to be. And they certainly didn't want to be dealing with another Kawhi Leonard injury. But fortune does favour the brave, and that's exactly what the Lakers have been. Had a really costly loss to the Hawks, which cost them an undefeated week. But they are still 8-3 and 4th in the conference. Luka Doncic, who you would have to think is sitting there at least in the top 5 MVP voting by general voters, and certainly going to be sitting on that All-NBA first team. Huge week for him. 31.7 points, 6.7 rebounds, 10.3 assists to go, 2.3 steals and 0.7 blocks. It is the field goal efficiency that I will pick on here in a moment, and a lot of this comes down to the way games are broadcast. 3.7 turnovers, as I mentioned. 41.7 from the field. Okay, 36.1 from deep, 78.6 from the free throw line. You're not going to be able to overcompensate from that when a guy's jacking shots up. The game against San Antonio, he was at 1.7 of 22 shooting. So, yeah, there's a lot of points going on right now, and I really appreciate the records that everyone's pointing out around this. But you do have to be reasonable and understanding he's getting there because of the volume of shots and the pace that's being played at. Not from an efficiency standpoint. For Luka, yeah, we talk about his lateral movement. We talk about him getting in and out of the lineup. We talk about him getting rests and fitness. But at the end of the day, you've still got to be efficient. And it's the efficiency that's either going to, pick you up and get you to where you need to be, or it's going to lower you down fairly fast. And at the moment, that's what seems to be happening in the way of Luka. But, really nice start for the Lakers. Again, I just want to see that efficiency improve. For Memphis, 1-2 on the week, 4-7 overall. They are now 10th in the West. So they're floundering at play-in. They would rather be play-off. But it does speak to the early part of the season when someone can be 4-7, sitting in 10th and looking like they're stuck in the mud. Santi Aldama, their best player, 3 games played on the week, 14.7 points, 5 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1 steal and 1 block. So some nice numbers there. 44.1 from the field, 31.3 from deep, and 81.8 from the free throw line. I mean, Memphis overall, they need to really look at their leadership. They need to look internally, and there's got to be some accountability. That's the ultimate answer to their issues. They've stated if they get rid of Jar, they want a star player, or they want really good young players and picks. Well, I don't think you're going to get a star player, and if you're going to get young players and picks, then you need to start looking at what you're going to do, because Jaren Jackson Jr. has just signed a max deal, and as much as I like him as a player, and I thought he had a really good season last year, he's not the guy that's going to be able to sustain what he does through a rebuild. So Memphis are really at a crossroads on that there. As I said, 1-2 record, 4-7 overall, 10th in the conference. I thought they were going to be better than they are. Fortune isn't favouring them bravely. It's nice to see Aldama stepping up, but certainly wasn't the week they would have envisioned. For Minnesota, they are still sitting top 6th in the West. And not Ja Morant, we've just talked about Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards with a really strong return to basketball over the last week. 28.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.5 blocks on 2.5 turnovers again. Managed to lift that record to 3-1 on the week and 7-4 overall. They are sitting 6th. 49.3 from the field, 51.3 from deep, and 86.9 from the free throw line. Again, there's probably still some questions, and probably some more questions than answers for Minnesota, but it's when they go on runs like this, it's when you see the participation and when you see the improvement, that you sort of sit there and go, well, there's a reason they made 2 straight conference finals. Whether they make a third is another question, but you can sort of see, when you look at them passing it around and giving each other an opportunity, I mean, prime example with Julius Randle and the rest of the team. How did they manage there without Jar? Sorry, not without Jar. How did they manage without Anthony Edwards? But again, really nice results for them. They're starting to build something. Can they get back into contention amongst what's going to be a really top-heavy West? A team that's not going to have to worry about how top-heavy the West is will be the New Orleans Pelicans, who got their first 2 wins of the season this week and still sit stone motherless in the West. 2-2 record, 2-8 overall. As I said, they are last. Trey Murphy with a nice week, trying to bring some balance where he can. 23.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.5 steals and 0.5 blocks on 2.8 turnovers. 48.4% from the field, 90.5% from the free throw line, and of course 38.2 from deep. Yeah, look, this is what we're dealing with right now. Zion has also been bitten by an injury bug. So I don't know exactly what we're going to be able to get out of New Orleans moving forward. But yeah, they're one of the 4 worst teams in the league. There's not much more to say. I thought they'd be a lot better, but they're not. They really aren't, and I think that's reflective of the leadership and the constant spill that's been going on in New Orleans. And I'm happily going to jump ahead of them really quickly because we're going to talk about how OKC only lost because of a really tight game against Portland. 3-1 on the week, 10-1 overall. They're the best team in basketball. It's not even close at this point. That's just how they're floating. Now, I know you look at Detroit, they're only 1 win off, but Detroit have not felt like the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that's where you've got to have context on everything that goes on in your game and the record and things of that nature. Because you can't tell me you've looked at OKC and you've looked at Denver, and you've looked at Detroit and gone, Detroit, OKC, that's the matchup I want. It's just simply not going to happen. Shea continues to be one of the leaders in the league, if not the best player in the league. 32.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block on 1 turnover. Gets it done on both ends effectively. 51.2 from the field, 48% from deep, 91.9 from the free throw line. So around 32, 5 and 6. And when it's almost impossible to guard, there's a reason that they just keep piling points up. There's a reason this team just continues to win. And keeping in mind that there are still guys to come back into this team. I would not want to be taking on this team when they get healthy because they genuinely look like they're going to be a 70-win team. I thought 65 was the way, but 70 is going to be the ultimate goal. Oklahoma are fine. They're flying. Speaking of teams that have begun to build up a little bit of pace, the Phoenix Suns, a 3-1 weekly record, 6-5 overall, now 8th in the West. So starting to really lift a little bit. Devin Booker, just the constant of this Phoenix team for the last decade, to the point where he's one of the greatest Suns of all time. He would be on the Mount Rushmore of Phoenix Suns players, in my opinion. 25.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, 5.8 assists with 1.3 steals, shot 50% from the field, 23.5 from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. Jalen Green, another injury bug though. He's just done another hamstring, likely 4 to 6 weeks. So just when you thought Phoenix were going to start to build something, and they've just sort of hit that middle of the road, they hit a pretty big roadblock themselves. How they manage that is the next question. I'm not sure specifically how they're going to do that, but Devin Booker's going to have to take on a lot of responsibility. We saw Grayson Allen with a 40-piece. He's been threatening to do some stuff in the league for a little while. It'll be interesting to see if they can get a little bit more out of him, but ultimately the fate of the team at this point is going to live and die by the fortunes of Devin Booker, and it has done for some time, even in its successful period in this decade. The fortunes of the team have rode with Devin Booker, so we'll see exactly what goes on there for Phoenix. For Portland, a 1-2 week, 5-5 overall, they're now 9th, and Denny Avdia continues to keep staking his claim as one of the better players in the conference, but if he keeps posting numbers like this, an all-star conversation has to be had. 28.7 points, 8.7 rebounds, and 7.3 assists in those 3 games, with 0.7 steals and 1 block on 2.7 turnovers. 42.9 from the field, 34.8 from deep, and 90.9 from the free throw line. Again, Portland have just had a couple of games there where they were going to be able to pull something out of the hat. They looked like they were going to get a result, and they've had a couple of results. But again, it's just that inexperience that's probably letting them down at the moment. I can certainly see Portland still being around that playing tournament this year with the form that they've been in. Certainly ahead of a couple of teams that I've probably predicted to have a bit of a higher finish. But that just, again, I think comes down to the personnel that have now committed themselves. A change in coaches also helped, in my opinion. I'm not there to point fingers, but it's really strange that pretty much the same roster for the last 2 years, 2 of the last 3 years, has just aimed to get a top, the 2 best draft picks, and it hasn't happened. I just think it's a little bit coincidental with all the underlying charges happening at the moment. But again, Denny Avdia having a really nice season. He's not going to get the credit for it that he should because he's in Portland, but he has been bowling. Over to Sacramento, we've only got 3 teams to go. 1-2 weekly record, 3-7 overall, 11th in the conference. DeMar DeRozan, the leader of this illustrious group in this week, and someone like a Russell Westbrook had a really nice contribution there, just not enough for me to be the team's player of the week. 21.7 points, 3 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 0.7 steals, and 1.3 turnovers. 50% from the field, 63.6 from deep, and 100% from the free throws. So you can certainly argue that the offensive side of the ball isn't the fault of DeRozan. That's fair enough. But defensively, yeah, you've still got to take a little bit of accountability. Now, I know that there's some offense that's been generated by Russell Westbrook. I really like it. I think it's proving to people that he should have stayed in the league, but it's a matter of whether it's pertinent that he's the one that's getting all those touches, because you do have plenty of guys who can handle the basketball on that team that can handle themselves with the basketball in their hand on that team, but it's just a matter of obviously knowing whose turn it is and whether anyone's going to be able to play defense, because Sacramento, their fate is going to be on the other side of the ball, and if they're going to score 30 points, that's great, or 130 points, that's awesome. The opposition's going to score 145, and that's where the image of the team changes very quickly. Speaking of images of teams, this is a team that has really shot up. San Antonio Spurs, 3-1 weekly record, 8-2 overall. They're now second in the conference, and Victor Wembanyama, after returning back to a full week of play, 24.3 points, 11.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1 steal, and 2.8 blocks on 4.3 turnovers. All of those numbers there scream MVP, best player in the league, best defender in the league, but because they are subpar to the standards that he set himself all year, it feels underwhelming. 47.1 from the field, 36.4 from deep, 92.6 from the free throw line, and the crucial thing that we have seen, or 2 crucial things we've seen for the Spurs. Number 1, De'Aaron Fox has returned back. That is a welcome boost. But number 2, it's the fact that Wembanyama is now confident enough to isolate himself in game-tying, winning, go-ahead situations. We don't need that as an opposition. Now, as a fan of the sport, I think it's great. As a Houston fan, it's not great, because the last thing you need to do is expand this man's arsenal to be more than the sum of its parts. And trust me, it's a pretty big equation based on what it's providing. I'm really liking it. De'Aaron Fox back with the team. Of course, Harper's still out, so we've still got to go through that adjustment cycle, but De'Aaron Fox just fitting in like a glove, as we knew he would be, and just making this man right here pretty happy with some of the Spurs friends that he's got. It's great to see them having some success after a little bit of mediocrity and languishing further down the positions. And finally, to Utah. Again, pulling a typical Utah. Just when you talk them up, they tend not to do much, and it's happened again. Didn't make a single mark in the winners column, and are now 3-7 overall, so a 0-3 week, 3-7 overall. They're 12th in the conference. Keontae George continues to be the shining light and the bright hope factor of this team. 21.3 points, 4 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 0.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2.7 turnovers. The efficiency from the field, absolutely brutal, but that's just basketball. I don't know, it's really strange, because Utah, they looked like they'd really jumped out. They looked like they were going to do something, and then they just had their hands clamped and haven't moved anything since, which doesn't really shock me when you consider everything that is going on with Utah there. But they started really strong. I thought they might do something, and they're now at a point where it's just like, well, that's it. This is the game we're playing. This is how we understand it to be played, so we're going to play it this way. Yep, they're really nice downhill, but we're talking about a team that has 3 wins. It's not going to cut it. I don't get this conversation about pumping up some of their talented ties to get them somewhere else, whether Lauri Markkanen is just mailing it in, but to me it doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, That's why they are in the front office, and that's why they are on the coaching staff, and that is why I'm sitting here on my YouTube channel. Speaking of YouTube channel, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment, let me know what you've thought of the week reviews. A lot happening off the court from an injury standpoint, a little bit of potential being shown on court, and generally overall greatness is coming to the to fruition, that's for sure. So we'll see exactly what the league has in store moving into week 4. Anyway, guys, that's been me. That's been my review for week 3 of the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.